Hello, hello. Welcome to the Five Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. I interview the top commercial real estate investors and industry experts so you can learn from their experiences. So if you're an investor, a high W-2 earner, or real estate or tech sales professional that wants to invest in real estate without having to manage properties or leave your day job, then this podcast is for you. Or if you're already investing in real estate, but you're doing it part-time and you want to become a full-time multifamily or full-time commercial real estate investor, this podcast is for you too. You're going to learn a ton. You will learn from real-life multifamily investors and other professionals in the industry. They're going to share their blueprints for success, and I'm super excited that you're here. So I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, hello. Abel Pacheco here, your host for the Five Talents Podcast. We are super excited today because we have an amazing guest, Mr. Steeve Breton. Steve, this is going to be an amazing show, man. You have so much value, so much insight and wisdom to deliver our listeners and guests. Or viewers now, if you're on Facebook or watching this on YouTube. So we just want to say thank you very much. Thanks for joining us, brother.
Hey, thanks for having me. Thrilled.
Yeah, we're excited. So I first ran into Steve, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, at least over a year and a half ago, when we were still meeting in person at these live events, and Center Mass. I can't remember which city it was, maybe Baltimore or LA or maybe both, Steve. But I got to get a little bit into your world and heard what you were doing, saw what you accomplished, while working at your W-2 full-time job. It resonated with me because I'm in tech, or I was in tech also, and I know you had a background in it. And when I heard that you just, were able to acquire, 1,200 doors, 140 units, $140 million worth of commercial real estate. So over 1,200 doors of multifamily apartment complexes as an active investor, as a founder for Velocity Capital. And then starting out, you were a passive investor. So you've invested in double digit numbers, like 10 something passive investments, and all in, hundreds of millions of dollars that you have a piece of. And it was just an amazing story. So if you are near a pen and a piece of paper, I would imagine this is going to be a great show to take some notes on, especially when you think about analysis, really the finer details. I was drawn to Steve when he was talking about his underwriting, the way he does comps, or his analysis process of the deal to make sure that it's the right one for all of his investors. So that's probably a good description. And now I have the opportunity to interview him. So I'm appreciative, thankful, humbled. So Steve, let me turn it over to you. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, and man, we'll get into a great conversation.
Yeah. So, just, quick background is, like you said, I was in IT, had a career, 20 plus years. It was a great job. Everything was wonderful. Then, in part of that, in 2008, my retirement account got a good shellacking with the financial crisis. And then shortly thereafter, we were acquired by a much larger company, and I had to lay some people off. I was worried about being laid off. So the culmination of where can I invest my money so that I can retire someday, and then having the hit on the business being purchased, and being worried about, will I even make it to retirement? Will I have a job that long? Yeah. That's when I started thinking, well, maybe I ought to invest really heavily in real estate, because I had already started investing in real estate and was enjoying it. I had a small portfolio here in Boston. But was always thinking in the back of my mind, should I increase that portfolio to the point where it replaces my income? And then I could do real estate, which was really more of a passion for me at that point. So that's what I started to pursue, and took a few years.
What year was that? What year was that?
Oh, man. So 2016 is when I really started getting into the idea of, I'm going to leave my job.
Cool.
But I invested from like 2012 to 2016 in various projects, the portfolio that I had in Boston, as well as a lot of passive investments in syndications.
So you are investing since 2012 in various things and syndication. So you kind of were a little familiar with the world already, and that's kind of the initial the
Yeah.
initial run, I would imagine, that got you excited about going a
Right.
little more active. Okay,
Yeah,
gotcha.
the
2012 and
syndications came
2016.
like 2 years in. I had already acquired 16 units locally, and I was managing those, and it was all like duplexes. And it was just a ton of work on top of my full-time job and having children and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So when I invested passively in a syndication and realized I was making the same returns without having to do very much work, I immediately started to sell off my other properties and just plowed everything into syndication.
Yeah, that's so awesome. So you this that's funny because so many people ask me all the time, like, well, couldn't I just invest in single families, or I'm not ready for commercial, or I just want to buy a duplex. And here you were, you did buy the duplex. In fact, you bought,
Mhm.
7, 8 of them, 16 total doors.
Yeah.
Say the part again, what you just said. I think I heard you were making more, you made more money in commercial real estate in less time is how I heard it. But please, in your
Yeah.
words,
So
how did that come out?
the cash flow was just a little bit less, but on the back end sale on the commercial side, I was making certainly easily as much money as I was making when I was selling properties in Boston.
Yeah,
But I didn't have to self manage. I didn't have to do all the work with the property management company or anything like that. So it was really a matter of just selecting the right people to work with, the right
yeah,
sponsors of syndicated real estate.
yeah. That's
Um,
awesome.
the most important part was you could scale, right? It doesn't, you only have so many hours in the day to manage your own properties. But when you're going into syndications, you literally, once you write the check, you're done. You just sit back and collect the passive income, and
Yeah,
it's much more passive, almost truly passive.
yeah, yeah. It makes perfect sense. And so, where'd you work? What did you do in tech? Maybe you can describe this and it resonate with somebody, that's our listeners or our guests.
Yeah,
Because I have a lot of people that worked at Rackspace that I have a feeling are, maybe watching me from the outskirts. But go ahead.
right. Now there's a ton of people that were in tech that moved into real estate, or that
Mhm.
at least invest in real estate.
Yeah.
Um, Partly because it's just it's a good paying career, so you've got people with disposable income, but you
Hmm.
also have people that have that sort of technical numbers aptitude, and when they see an apartment complex and you go through the business plan with them, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I started off as a programmer, then I was managing a lot of other folks that were doing the programming. I just found myself more interested in the business aspects of what problem were we trying to solve,
Hmm. Hmm.
realized that not a lot of IT people had the ability to speak that language or to translate between the two. So I
Yeah.
was able to speak the technical part as well as the business part of it. I went on and got my MBA, and then
Yeah.
I was managing really the financial portfolio for a large biotech company.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. And in the years 2016, what was it? Was it something specific? Well, actually, I apologize. You said you had to lay a bunch of people off, and then
Mhm.
that was the kick. Was it like a month after that? Did it take you a year? Did
Yeah,
you work actively while you were exiting, or maybe that transition would be awesome to hear?
right. No, I kept working the whole time. I was basically researching and trying to really get my nerve up to buy larger properties. And then I realized, if I'm really going to do the syndication thing, it doesn't work in the Northeast because the properties are too expensive here. So I started looking in Texas and other parts of the country where the cash flow is better. But then I got even more nervous because now I'm not there to keep an eye on my property. So how do you do that properly?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
required more education. And then eventually I hired a mentor to help me to figure all the stuff out. Went to a bunch of conferences, and it was 2017 by the time I actually launched my business and did the first deal as a general partner, as an active partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And even then, I partnered with somebody who'd already been doing a few of these deals and was much further down the road than I was, to make absolute certain that we were doing it correctly, and that the friends and family that were trusting me with their investment, that were coming along for the ride,
Yeah.
that their money was going to be treated well and there was no risk there.
Yeah. A lot of my first investors were friends and family. A lot of people that I talked to are friends and family or
Mm.
coworkers, my friends, right? And it takes a nerve. It takes a bit of nerve to kind of say, hey, I will take, $50,000 kind of minimum investment, or
Right.
100 or more of someone's life savings and say, I know the right thing to do, especially if you've never done it before. And it sounds like you're on my exact same path, which was, and I didn't want to do my first deal alone. And it sounds like you didn't do that either.
Hmm.
For those people that are, listening right now, they're trying to figure out, well, I want to go do what, Steve is doing. I want to go buy some apartment complexes or multifamily commercial real estate. I want to take other investors, show them the good returns and figure out how to do that. But I've never done it before. How would you recommend people get started in the business now, having your track record that you do?
So I do a bit of mentoring myself now. People come to me and they're trying to get into this business or trying to augment their income or just leave their jobs altogether. And what I generally tell them is, if you live in a decent market, if you're living in the Southeast or, parts of the country where cash flow is just better,
Mm-hmm.
then find a property. And while you're trying to find that property to buy, you should also be networking with a lot of people that are either going to help you manage the property, people that might invest with you. So, you're just looking for those partnerships, and the two kind of go in tandem. You're not going to find a property tomorrow. So you have time while you're looking for the property to also build up your team and
Mm-hmm.
figure out, what can you bring to that partnership and what can a partner bring to help you be more successful.
Yeah, yeah, that's every single one of my deals has partners on it, many multiple partners, and we've been able to acquire, a good now 600 doors actively, and we've invested passively in a few hundred doors, and there's partnerships on every
Yeah.
single deal, which is very different than my single family business, which I did for 10 years. It was me and my wife, and we did
Right.
the work, all of it. I would imagine so much like your duplexes, right?
Hmm.
Now somebody that's listening into this goes, well, shoot, I want to start immediately, but Steve did 16, doors in single family ish before he got started. And so did Abel. What advice do you give them there? Do you have to go single family to jump to commercial? Is it something you recommend? Everybody's got a different philosophy. I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, no, I had always, all the research I did was that the majority or certainly a good number of people that go single family first end up going into multifamily. And,
Yeah.
whether they go into duplexes or 3, 4, 5 unit type buildings. And I
Yeah.
did I did eventually pick up a 6 unit building as I was thinking about getting into larger assets as well. And then after a while, it's like they either build out a really large portfolio that they're managing, or
Hmm.
they stop because they realize it's not scalable while they have a job, and
Yeah.
they'll start going into syndication.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I immediately skipped the single family, knowing that it was just going to lead to multifamily. And once I had a small portfolio of multifamily, I realized I'm just going to skip that too. I'm going to sell those off and go straight into syndication.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I stopped at like 8 or 10 full when I was full-time W-2. So we're kind of sound similar.
Right.
You did a bigger one than I did. I hadn't done the 6 unit. So you were already going commercial, but man, trying to hang with a W-2
Hmm.
job. I was same tech, worked at Rackspace hosting company. I was a senior director or director of partnerships and sales, and I had some
Right.
pretty large teams. We were doing $50 million a year in business, and like Monday through Friday, I'm engaged at work all day
Yeah.
long. So then when I get home, it's the side hustle, but this intentional investing for myself was always for freedom of time. So I have enough money, and then I realized all my nights and weekends were absolutely consumed with
Hmm.
like looking for my next deal or finding out which way to do it, and then a renter would call, and your passive investment became active all of a
Sounds very
sudden, right?
familiar.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. And to
So,
that point, when
yeah,
you're doing this as a side hustle,
yeah,
you need that job, right? You still have to support your
you
family,
still
and
have to have it.
yeah, so that job matters, and you want to have the integrity of when you're at that job, you're there.
Yeah,
So you really don't have any choice. Maybe you do a little something at lunch and make a phone call or something, but for the most
yes.
part, it's put the kids to bed, and then you're working for 3, 4 hours again.
Yeah, well, you
You
had kids at that time. I guess you were in a different situation. I have my 3-year-old and 1-year-old now,
Yeah,
but at the time we didn't have any little ones, so I guess I could grind more hours. But man, I
right.
couldn't even imagine doing that with my 3 and my 1
Yeah.
back then. I don't think I would have been able to do it.
It's all possible. Just a matter of, how hard do you want to work? How badly do you want it?
I love it.
Uh,
How many kids do you have?
I have three boys.
And what are their ages?
Yeah. So now they're, late teens. My oldest is 21. My middle one is his freshman year in college now.
That's so awesome.
So yeah,
Yeah,
things
man.
have definitely moved along since then. But
Yeah.
um, I,
And
and I did achieve that time freedom, and that's really the thing. First, I was looking for
yeah.
financial security.
Yeah.
Then when I had that with my 16 units, I'm like, okay, even if I got laid off, this would
Yeah.
be
You're
enough
good.
income to help me, at least survive, right? To do okay.
Yeah.
And if I keep the job and eventually retire, 16 units would be fine. It's a little additional income. It's nice. But then I moved from that financial security piece to saying, well, I want financial freedom. I
Yeah.
want to be able to do whatever the hell I want to do,
Whatever. Yeah.
whatever. It doesn't matter how much it costs. It doesn't matter what that vacation costs. And then looking at it and being like, I just want to make as much money as possible,
Yeah.
not because, not necessarily for the love of money,
Hmm.
but more about what can you do with that money? You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
great vacations can you take your family, your friends on? How many different um, things, charities or whatever can you contribute to?
Yeah.
And if you're making that much money the right way with your time freedom, especially now, the idea of, well, I can't go and volunteer at this organization because I have to go make money, right? I have to go to my job, or something that's going to take up your time. Instead, it's like, I just have this business that pretty much runs. I make my own schedule, work whenever I want. So if the volunteer hours are X on whatever day it is, I just go.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
deliver food for our local food pantry. And so, on Wednesdays, I just get up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, walk away from my desk, and I go do deliveries. And, I worked into my schedule. It's so easy to do now.
Hmm. Hmm. Man, that's amazing. And congratulations on one, the financial freedom, the time freedom, and now, just full circle, like giving back, taking the time, for example, to do this podcast interview so somebody can learn and hear something that maybe sparks a little bit of flame and they can go do it themselves. But then also, and the serving in nonprofits, right? That's
Mhm.
a time, and somebody needs to have a little meal and you're helping them, you're helping them with it, especially during the time. 2020 was rough, and it's nice to see
Yeah.
that, man. That congratulations, and
A lot more
kudos to you.
need in 2020 for sure.
Yeah, well, that's great.
Yeah. No, that feeling of, when you're that close to it, like I'm literally knocking on people's doors and handing them grocery bags,
Hmm.
and they're
Hmm.
so grateful. And half the time it's like it's a little old lady who she doesn't have family around
Yeah.
anymore, and she's
Yeah.
asked me to put the groceries in her refrigerator, because she's sort of weak and frail. And it's like, wow, I'm
Yes.
actually truly helping someone here. It's
Yep.
super personal.
Yeah, man. And you know what I love about giving back is, it's a little time, effort, and energy, but what you put into it, the time, effort, and energy, what they get, you
Mhm.
get like, 10x. I don't know if you want to say the 10x at that spot, but
Yeah.
that feeling that, just the knowing you help somebody else out is far greater than your investment of your
Right.
time. It
Yeah.
just
And
feels great.
the other part of that is the amount of gratitude that you have for your life and your
Mm,
ability to do these things, right? When you're
yeah.
engaging with people like that, having those interactions, you're like, wow, I've got an amazing life. Like, this is incredible that I get to do this, and that I
Yeah.
don't need that help, that service that I'm providing. I don't have to get that from anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, so that makes you really feel grateful. And I think, as you know, the more grateful you are, the more good things come.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife is watching a series of, or I'm sorry, listening to a series of podcasts right now, and she's telling me every day. And one of them was the study on the most valuable mindset you can have for your
Mhm.
health, your wealth, just all the way around. And she said in the study, all the years, all the hours, all the people, all the stuff, it was the feeling of gratitude.
Was it?
And if the feeling of gratitude will change, your body, physiology, physically, your emotions, your mindset, and cures diseases if you're in that spot, and just really helps all the way around with
Right.
every bit of your life. And that was probably they said the number one best attitude you could have, that's going to have the most improvement across your life.
Right. That's fantastic. I'm not surprised at all to hear that.
Neither was I. And I go, "Well, you know what? Shoot, yes, I have gratitude, and for me, it's like prayer and meditation and thanking the Lord, breakfast,
Mhm.
lunch, dinner, that kind of stuff. But I don't know if I really set aside the way she said they just prescribed it is even like 10 minutes a day and put it in a journal, write it down,
Yep.
and keep adding to the same gratitude journal. Every day something new comes up. Today is breath in my lungs. Tomorrow it's like sun shining. And next day it's
Mhm.
like your beautiful children. Or, today was great. Somebody smiled at me as we were passing each other, and you're writing those down. And, anyways, it just kind of goes. So
Right.
yeah, these are cool, man. I'm sorry we got sidetracked. We're not always talking about commercial real estate on our
It's all good.
podcast, but this is all. These are great. These are great
But
mindsets. So
the interesting thing is when you're talking to somebody about a different kind of business, you
yeah,
don't often get into these sort of conversations. When
yeah,
you're
yeah,
talking to
yeah.
real estate people, this stuff comes up all the time.
It does, right? Yeah, we have a little more freedom to get into whatever we want to, and it's the entrepreneurial side, and yeah,
Right.
man.
And it's
So
funny because it's coming from a bunch of IT guys.
yeah, that's for sure. Well, let me I'll take a moment and say thank you. This has been a great, sidetrack on this side. Not on about sidetrack. This has been a good core conversation of what we do and why we do it, rather, is probably the best way to state it. Um, for commercial real estate, you took a lot of either skills or traits about your work ethic, or the analysis that you did, the very careful attentiveness to detail in tech that's a lot of times required to get things absolutely right, for them to work for everybody. And you kind of push that into this analysis, right? We talked earlier on about being a good financial steward for your investors, trying to make sure that they get the right decision. So let's have this conversation. And I think for the general partners, new general partners that are trying to figure out how to break in, or passive investors, if you're thinking about investing, I want to, this should be the discussion that, you really take some notes on as well about the analysis. Like, what is underwriting? What is analysis, Steve? What goes into you determining whether it's a good deal or not? And we'll probably head down this path.
Yeah, sure. So on the IT side or in the business front, um, to be able to manage a portfolio of large projects, you have to have the ability to look at the project that's being proposed. How much is
Mm-hmm.
it going to cost? What's the actual value? What are we solving for? And then do some ROI calculations, right? It's going to cost so much in the first couple of years. It's going to cost X amount to maintain it year after year. And what are we saving by doing this? Or how much revenue will it generate?
Yes.
And so with multifamily, it's the exact same thing. You have to have a business plan. That business plan has to make sense. And so it's looking at, what are your rents are going to be at takeover day one? How
Mm-hmm.
quickly can you grow those rents if they're below market? Um, what's your strategy for doing renovations? How many renovations can you do per month realistically with the right property management company? Um, what is your plan with expenses? Are you going to charge back water? So it's all the same sort of concepts, but you really have to look at every little aspect of how are you going to manage that property from day one, and are your plans realistic for that property type, right? For multifamily, whether it's luxury Class A or it's like a Class C, more blue collar workforce housing. Uh, they're all going to have nuances in terms of how they operate, as
Mm-hmm.
well as the market you're in, right? Northeast properties are going to be a lot more expensive to operate compared to properties that are in the Southwest or Southeast.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's the general idea of it. A lot of it is really, again, does this business plan make sense for this property, this market, et cetera? And that's where we spend most of our time. Even when I'm mentoring people, it's we're digging deep into spreadsheets. The spreadsheet I use has the entire page is completely
It's
full. You can
awesome.
scroll down and
Yeah.
there's 5, 6 tabs like that.
I know.
Um, and it doesn't have to be that complex, but if you really want to get granular, that's where it's at.
Yeah. I did when I was doing the analysis on my single family properties, I made my own spreadsheet, and I
Yeah,
thought
you
I
could do
put
it on a
everything
napkin.
that Yeah, they put it all in there, and they're like, okay, this I felt pretty good about my spreadsheet because it had
Right.
cash on cash return, it had IRR. I figured out this, crazy calculation of time and
Yeah.
value of money, et cetera, et cetera. And it had, my overall average return, and I had this nice spreadsheet that was pretty slick. And then I moved in a commercial, and I go, oh, is this it? It's just longer. It's the first page. And then, and my mentor was like, yeah, use the second tab for the budget. Use the third tab for your overall, returns for investors. Use your fourth tab for the amortization schedule. Like, oh my gosh, there's like 6 or 7
Yeah.
tabs here.
Partnership splits and preferred returns and
Yeah,
your loan information. Yeah. There's a lot to it.
there's a lot in there. And if you knew me from my background, you knew I had a sales operations team. I had a pretty amazing crew with Excel documents, print out the numbers. They would serve me the data, and we would
Right.
make the decision and based off of the data. And now I'm like, oh man, I gotta source it, find it, put it in there, make sure it works right. But once you get the hang of it, you do it a few times and you get better and better. You mentioned a couple things though, nuances, right? Class A, class B, class C,
Mhm.
market in the Northeast versus Southwest. And unfortunately, those are the things that take time, effort, and energy and cycles. Like you
Yeah.
never know the problems that are going to come up, all of them, until you've done a couple deals in maybe
Right.
either of those classes. You may be able to find out more from education and learning from other sources, but there's something new in every deal, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had properties right now that we own and we're managing in the Atlanta area.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is south of Atlanta, but that one's like 2 hours south of Atlanta.
Yeah.
One's half hour west of Atlanta, and one's about 40 minutes north of Atlanta.
Yep.
All of them operate at different expense ratios. They all
Yeah.
have different, flavors of tenants and some of the issues that we have with maintenance or whatever it is. It's all different. And you
Mm-hmm.
don't know until you get in there, you do your due diligence, you walk the property, you look at your rent roll to see what kind of tenants you have, what industry they're in, all that sort of thing. I mean, there's so many moving parts to it. And even with all of that experience, I'm looking at a property west of Atlanta now. So I'll have all 4 quadrants. And I'm in the middle of underwriting that this morning. And I still had a ton of questions about, what's the expense ratio going to look like? Or what's, insurance for this part of the town? Or, it's just, there's so many different variables to consider. You don't have to have them all perfect up front to make your offer, but eventually you have to get right down to that, nitty gritty detail.
Yeah. 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 So maybe let's talk about it two ways. As a passive investor, somebody that's trying to figure out, I need to know enough of what's going on so that I know it's a good investment. We'll
Right.
start there, and then we'll build a little bit more for like a general partner, right?
Yeah.
Um, what are some ways that I can learn more about these nuances between different or different markets, right? You're talking about one market versus how do I even begin to learn this stuff?
That's a really good question. There are some statistics. You can go to websites like I think it's called Data USA or datausa.io. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there's the what is it? The BLS, Department of Labor Statistics,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then a bunch of things where the data is already packaged for you. But you can just do searches on things like population growth.
Yep.
That's my number one thing. Why do I like Atlanta? Because everyone from the Northeast is moving to Atlanta or Florida. The population there is booming, and so are the jobs. Same with Texas. People are pouring out of California into Texas.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
you want to go invest in the place where everyone's leaving. That just
Yeah.
means fewer tenants or residents, less demand for your apartments, which means your rents are going to come down eventually.
Yep.
The opposite is true if you're in a growing market. So that's the first thing as a passive investor, and I still do invest passively on occasion. But
Okay.
whether I'm looking at something for myself or making a passive investment, number one, what's this market look like? And it could just
Yep.
be a small suburb next to Georgia or next to Austin or Houston, whatever. I'm going to look specifically at that suburb. What's the growth rate of their population? what are the jobs within a half-hour drive, 45-minute drive? Although I guess now with COVID, that part matters a little bit less. But you want to see what those major drivers are in that market. So
Makes sense.
that's the first one, right? Just simple population. Am I investing in the right place? And then getting into the numbers a bit more. As a passive investor, it's tough because it takes so much time to learn this stuff. My first few investments, I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, me neither.
I knew
it was based on trust, and I kind of knew the market because I was investing in my first deal where I live. So I was
that
like,
helps.
okay, looks good.
Yeah. And yeah, I managed smaller multifamily, so I had an idea. I have an idea of what makes at least some sense, but did I really know that this person had, a great business plan, that this property was definitely in a cash flow? Looking back now, I realize how clueless I really was. I was fortunate because I did choose a really good partner to
Me
invest
too.
with.
Same.
And most of the time it works out fine. I think 99% or maybe even more of the sponsors are really good people, and they're doing a good job. And I know quite a few of them. So that choosing the right partner is going to help a lot. What I always try to convey to people when they're looking to invest passively, it's when you're looking at that deal, ask the partner to show you their underwriting. And go on Zoom and do a live quick review of the underwriting, and just ask a few questions. Ask things like, how much are you raising rents in year 1, 2, and 3? Can you show me in your P&L, those rent raises, so that that they're not trying to raise them by 100% in a year, which would make absolutely no sense.
None.
Right. So you just ask them that question, and then you let them go to the P&L. They show you where the rent raises are, and you say, well, how do you know you can achieve that rent?
Yeah.
How do you know you can renovate so many units? And they'll tell you their plan. If they've done their homework, if they know what they're talking about, they'll get into, well, the current market rates are, $900 per month, and we're only at $750. And so we're going to go halfway there in year 1 with rent raises of $75 or whatever. And we're going to renovate 3 units per month. And we already have a company that does those renovations for us. And, they'll be able to give you that understanding, or help you to understand everything that went into their thought process around building out that business plan. If you ask them the question and you get crickets, that's an indication that maybe they didn't do their homework. But a good partner is going to be, really confident in their discussion around their business plan and all the different aspects of it.
I agree. Yeah, that's all good insight. So for our listeners, there's a couple things, right? I heard the population growth, super important. Just think about like an old school economic, diagram, supply and demand.
That's
If
it.
you have increasing demand, which are people moving into markets, and a supply, even if it's steady, increasing demand over supply, you're going to have increase of prices, like whether it's housing prices or rent prices. So those are a couple of things. And Steve mentioned, I thank you for the website mention, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the other one, and then city -data, I think citydata.com is another one too. And
bestplaces.net.
Yeah. So there's all these sources that you're not trying to, you want to get independent sources, trusted sources of data, so that you don't just have to lean on, the offering memorandum that's provided. You can go search that and say, oh yeah, I like this market. I can see growth year over year. So I love that. Hello. You're listening to the 5 Talents Podcast. I'm your host, Abel Pacheco. If you're enjoying this podcast, then I know you're serious about achieving financial freedom. Are you ready to create your own path through multifamily investing for yourself and your family? Then I know you're going to appreciate our Investor's Guide to Multifamily Investing. It's titled Tackling Commercial Real Estate the Easy Way. We use this guide to invest ourselves in $93 million worth of real estate. So we're going to show you the basic mechanics of multifamily syndications and how to evaluate your next passive investment opportunity. So the best part, if you subscribe to our podcast now, leave us a review and a rating. I'm going to give you a free copy of our ebook. So please take a moment to do that now. Once you've done that, go to 5tcre.com/ebook, 5tcre.com/ebook, Make sure to let us know you left a review, and we're going to send you a free copy. So thank you so much for subscribing to the 5 Talents Podcast. We really appreciate it. And then just the question, I really like the fact, hey, can you show me your underwriting? You may not know what the heck it means, but having the ability to work with the partner. There's another part here that I think is key too, because honestly, sometimes I'm so busy. Let's say we have a new deal and it comes in, I may not be able to meet with everyone to actually do this, right? But we kind of do a recorded, walkthrough of a property and kind of explain some of these things. And then that way somebody can see it in advance. But I'd be happy to field a call, hey, I saw your recording of your walkthrough and your pro forma says 2% increase. How do you know you can actually get this increase of rents? Or, those questions where, you're digging in, you're going to learn. And you can, talk to some other syndicators or operators or people that are doing deals, and you're going to learn a little bit, from everybody else. And great ways to kind of learn on the way through different nuances, because they're going to do something different in Atlanta, or I do something different in Texas. Right. Another thing you mentioned earlier that I wrote down was the operating expense ratio, right? So income over expenses. How much of that is your operating expenses? Well, man, maybe drastically different in the Northeast. If not, I've never done a deal there, I have no idea what it is.
Yeah. So in general, you can probably operate a property in most parts of the country somewhere between 40 and 50% of your revenue will be spent on expenses, right? So it's a 40% expense ratio. But just asking again, I'm looking at your underwriting, Mr. Sponsor. Can you show me your expenses? And usually in that spreadsheet, you'll see the expense ratios at the bottom. So, what's your expense ratio here total? And if it's like 25 or something, then something's wrong, because nobody's operating property at 25%. Yeah. So just getting a sense of, are they at least in a reasonable range of 40 to 50%? Got it. And then again, asking a question like that seems a little bit low. Not that I'm an expert, because I'm a passive investor, but it seems a little bit low. Can you explain to me why it's so low in this market? Yeah. And again, let them tell you what they know. And through that conversation, you're building a relationship, right? Yep. The second time you invest with that partner, you might ask half as many questions. And the third time, you might just be writing a check. Yeah. Yeah. Trust. Once you've established the trust, ready to go. I have some investors the same. Hey, this is kind of like the last one. Yes. Okay, let's move forward. And some that are brand new, and we understand it takes a little bit of education and insight, and sometimes to move forward. So yeah. Well, before we go, where can our investors, our listeners, guests, anybody that wants to get into your world, Steve, where should we go reach out to you? Where do we contact you? Best place would be velocitycap.com. So it's short for Velocity Capital. So you hit Velocity the website, Capital. You can contact me through there. You can check us out and see what we're up to. All right. Sounds good. And who do you actually want to reach out to you? Who's your ideal, person to contact you? Anybody who's looking to learn more about multifamily, whether they want to invest or they want to become a more active person in the multifamily space. I do a little bit of mentoring. You can see that on the website as well. But yeah, I'm always happy to talk about real estate in general or multifamily. So please go ahead and reach out. Oh, that's awesome. And before you leave, right, I may have like 1 or 2 more minutes here before I host you, or before I take up more time than you've allotted. Can you give us 1 or 2 of mine, maybe a mindset, insight, something on your, how to actually move forward, because you were able to overcome some of those fears, some of those obstacles, whether they would be literal challenges or mental blocks, and just go acquire a ton of freaking commercial real estate, man. And there's so few people that can actually move forward and go down this journey that you've done, by evidence of the number of investors that are doing what you're doing. So if you can share any wisdoms or insights in this area, that'd be awesome. Yeah, I mean, you can't underestimate the power of getting some good coaching, but even before that, educating yourself. getting yourself to, you don't want to have analysis paralysis, but spending several months where at least a few nights a week or listening to podcasts in the car on the way to work, whatever it is, you can learn a ton about real estate. And then once you get to the point where you're like, okay, I feel like I know 80% of it,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
but I just feel like there's some pieces missing. I got to put the pieces of a puzzle together. Or I'm a little bit nervous about moving forward. When you
Yeah,
start getting those thoughts, that's when you need a mentor to come give you, swift kick in the behind to get moving.
yeah,
That's what I did too. I really struggled. I spun my wheels for a good 6 to 9 months, thinking I knew what I should know, but didn't really feel confident enough to move forward.
yeah.
And the mentor was what it took. And then got the first deal done and learned from that one, and then never looked back.
Yeah, yeah, just won't keep trucking, right? I love the mentor and the coach because that's somebody to kind of give you that nudge and tell you, hey, you're on the right track. That uncomfortable, uneasy feeling, that's because you're doing something new. It is outside of your comfort zone.
That's
Yes,
right.
you've never closed a $5 million deal. Your biggest anything has been a couple $100,000 in a single family world or whatever, and it's going to feel this way if you want to have this massive success that you're trying to achieve. It's going to you have to keep stretching yourself, right?
Yeah. So it's funny you bring that up, and given where we are, first week or whatever, second week of the year.
Yeah,
Um, so people thinking about goals and what are they going to achieve this year and all that sort of thing. Hopefully you were thinking about that in December, preparing
yeah,
for this year. But
yeah,
in any event, what you just mentioned is really true about, you set these goals. I'm going to go do X. I'm going to go buy a 100-unit property, or even a 10-unit property,
yeah,
or even my
yeah,
first duplex, whatever that goal is. If you're not scared a little bit, then that goal clearly isn't big enough for you. Like, you can
yep,
definitely do better, right? So if you're not scared, then just go do it, because that's going to be nothing. If
yeah,
you're a little bit scared, that's a really good thing, because that's going to highlight to you, or it should, what is it that I'm scared about? Is it that I feel I'm not good enough? Is it that I don't have the right education in place? Do I not have the right partners? You got to figure out what is it that's making you nervous or scared. That's a sign of, where do you need to now focus? Do
yeah,
you do some work on yourself? Do you need to do some work about, finding the right partners, or talking to more of your friends and family about being able to invest with you? And, maybe you're worried that you're not gonna be able to raise the capital, whatever it is, but go figure that thing out. And then you won't be nearly as nervous, and you will take some more steps forward, and you'll become a better person for it.
yeah, yeah. Absolutely, I love it. Those are great insights, and I really appreciate it, Steve. Is there anything else we didn't talk about today that you're hoping I asked, I just didn't, or anything you want to bring some exposure to, or just anything on it in general?
Uh, it's funny. The only thing that comes to mind is, say yes more often. And so, that applies to real estate. Whenever I look at deals, somebody's like, "Hey, are you interested?" My first response is yes. Yeah, I don't know if I'm interested, but let's talk about it.
Yeah,
So I'm saying yes to the conversation at a minimum. But I think, especially with 2020, everyone being locked down with COVID and all this nonsense, I think there's going to be a lot more freedom to do things in 2021.
yeah.
And, make sure that we're not sitting here, feeling like we should just kind of stay in our little bubble. So say yes, get out there, do amazing things, partner with people, learn, take steps to progress in life.
Yeah, I love it. Those are really awesome parting words, and I appreciate it, Steve. Yeah, you made me think about I'll share this one since we were talking about tech and jobs. I worked at a really kicktail company. It was awesome. I
Yeah,
loved serving
Rackspace
at
was big
Rackspace.
back in my day.
We went from 100 million to $2 billion, and in the 10 years that I was there, up until 9.5 years, I really was telling myself, this is the place I'm going to work for the rest of my life.
Right.
And I gave everything I had to this company, right? Everything 26 to 38, I don't know, whatever. So, anyways, the mindset on this run for me was I never talked to any recruiters that would hit me all over LinkedIn.
Right.
We had massive successes. I mean, millions and millions and millions of dollars, just leaps and bounds year over year. And whenever somebody would ping me for a new job or a new opportunity, I would just say, no, I'm not interested. Thank you very much. And move on.
Right.
And it wasn't until like, year 9 that I had a VP come in, and he was from out of Rackspace, I think. And somebody just guided me a direction, and he goes, you got to be open to doing that. Actually, it was a coach. It was a coach within Rackspace that they gave us. And, he said, well, man, me, I've been here for years also. And he goes, but I interview at least once a quarter, if not once,
Wow.
twice a year. And I was like, you do? And it was kind of that taboo conversation. I go, you do? Are you thinking about leaving? He goes, no, not really. But I stay sharp. I figure out what's going on. And I really even interview them because I want to know what they're doing. I want to know that role. I want to know what I'm worth. And it was just, that was foreign to me, because I used to say no to every single opportunity. And then I had the other VP was the one that would tell me, he goes, you say no to an offer. You never say no to an opportunity. If there's an opportunity that comes out, you say yes. I love your thought process to that, Steve, because, I don't know if it could change my life or not. If I say no to that opportunity, I never even had a chance to see an offer. But if I say yes, let's check it out. This could be my key to making the next $1 million, or it could be a flop, but you got to say yes. You can always say no after you vet it a little bit more. But I love that mindset, man. That's really good. I started changing towards the end of my careers here. And I said yes to commercial real estate. Well, I said yes to real estate education once, signed up for one program. Then I did another program. I've joined like 5 or 6 programs, a couple of masterminds, too many thousands of dollars later, and all the cities of travel later. Every time I said yes to another program or mastermind or group, I've done another deal, which is kind of funny. It kind of matches the number of programs that I'm in. And this last year, I finally got to the point where I said no about 8 times to 8 different deals. And 2020 was my first time that I said yes so much that now I'm like, okay, I can't do it all. I said no 8 times because I said yes so many times.
Well, and some of that is like momentum too. You say yes enough times, you start building more relationships. Next thing you know, you've got a lot of deal flow or a lot of opportunities coming your way. And then, then you have to start thinking, wait a second, I can't do everything.
Yeah.
You get to choose. But it's nice to have options because then you get to pick the best of the options.
That's right. Say no to the offer, say yes to the opportunity. Well, man, Steve, this has been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate your time. My name is Abel Pacheco. I'm your host for the 5 Talents podcast. We've been talking to Steve, just an amazing conversation. If you guys appreciate something that he said, please go reach out to him. He'd love to talk to you. And then go to our podcast as well. Subscribe, leave us a rating and a written review. We'd appreciate it. Put some notes here on this Facebook Live if you've been watching. And thank you very much again, Steve. Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, great conversation.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of the 5 Talents podcast with your host, myself, Abel Pacheco. Each week, we're going to bring you interviews from industry experts and commercial real estate investors who followed their dreams and achieved massive success. Before you leave, let me ask you a few questions. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you learn something valuable? Was your mind stretched to what's possible and what you can achieve? Do you want other experts just like the one you heard today? If you answered yes to any or all of those questions, then please take a moment to subscribe to the 5 Talents podcast, give us a 5-star rating, and most importantly, leave us a written review. Tell us what you liked. Tell us your favorite guest. Give us any feedback. I'm excited to learn and improve so you can get a more valuable show. So thank you again for subscribing to the 5 Talents podcast.